And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and joining us again, Ralph Poynter. Good to have you back.
And fine, and good to be back.
Great. Okay, Ralph. So a lot we have to talk about. I know you were just at a protest earlier today. We'll talk a little bit about your take on Occupy Wall Street and the new political movements that are occurring today. And of course, we want to become up to date with what's happening with Lynne Stewart, your partner for many years, who's been incarcerated now. Another friend of mine incarcerated for a long period of time for their political beliefs and ideals, which is really...
I think we've just passed 29 months, and Monday was the 10th anniversary of her arrest.
Wow.
You know, that's...
so you have to add in all the years of the nightmare of dealing with, that hanging over your head, and then the jail sentence.
And then the jail sentence.
And of course, the experience of how, the unfairness of how this jail sentence, I've never seen anything like it.
Yes, it is quite ridiculous.
Let's tell people, let's go back for folks who might not know who is Lynne Stewart?
Lynne Stewart is the people's lawyer, meaning that she worked for the average guy on the street. She became a top-notch attorney and considered one of the 10 best in New York, which is saying a lot. Sure. And she charged each according to their ability to pay. If you didn't have it, the money, that is for a defense, Lynne did it. And if you did have it, she charged you a fee.
Right.
And for those who complained, she would always say, well, maybe you want a different attorney. Of course, no one did. And she went to the extent of doing political cases for 3 years for free because of the funds that she had built working for people who had them.
And so she came to be actually charged with a crime herself in the course of her defense.
Yes, it was a racist situation. You know, in the 30s and 40s when the lawyers defended people, black people particularly, and poor people in the South, the lawyers were under attack. Sure. And this is more the same. It is racism. It is racism. We call it Islamophobia now.
Sure.
It's against a different people, but it's racism nonetheless. And we have never seen the government attack lawyers the way they attacked Lynne Stewart.
Right. And just for folks who don't know, she was actually, what was the crime she was charged with initially, and then what happened with that?
She was charged initially with making a press release for the Blind Sheikh. And she did make a press release for the Blind Sheikh, who was in this country under the auspices of the CIA, which people are not aware of.
Sure.
And he was having a pulpit against Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Now, at the time, and presently...
The deposed president or dictator. Recently deposed.
That's right. And as Lynne said, for 30 years, he was wrapped around the shoulders of every American president. And he was oppressing his people. And the Blind Sheikh was here in this country to arouse the Egyptians here to fight for their freedom there. And he never called for any action in this country against this country. He had one interest. That was Hosni Mubarak. Now, he did, I believe, have a view of the Middle East as a caliphate. You know, of course...
traditional
Muslim system with the Hadith being the basic legal structure. And it was a very interesting situation. And I look forward to telling this story because he had an influence on Lynne, and Lynne had an influence on him. And one of the first conversations they had when the Sheikh asked Lynne if she would cover herself, if she would cover her arms.
Sure.
And Lynne's answer was definitely not. And they finally worked that out, that Lynne was going to be Lynne. Sure. And I
mean, people leave that out of it. I mean, the Sheikh, the Blind Sheikh, as you call him, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, he was defended by a woman lawyer.
That's right. Mohammed Yusri. Why don't you take the Sheikh on as a subject and talk about his history, learn about his history, etc. And Mohammed Yusri did a fantastic job. As a matter of fact, the government certified him. And Mike Wallace, who died recently, used him to interpret things that were happening in the Middle East.
Right, and he was also charged and sentenced to a lesser period of time.
He was charged and sentenced as an accomplice of the blind sheikh, and nothing was further from the truth. But the interesting thing that people don't know, the government knew that. This is, I don't know what you would call it, this is a fraud. You know,
the whole idea of a lawyer, an attorney going to the mat to defend their client is I think really, and Lynne brought this out, and I think it's at the heart of this case, because right now in the White House just the other day, the president played the new version of Atticus Finch in The Kill a Mockingbird, right? And Atticus Finch is an attorney who defends a person who is, he knows is innocent, but he knows doesn't have a chance. He's going to be convicted, right? And when he says it, he says the arm that he would have to have used to commit the crime is crippled and could not be used.
Yes,
he cannot be guilty. You have to let him go, but you're not going to. But look inside yourself, right?
Yes.
To the jury. So you know, President Obama is praising a lawyer who went to the mat for his clients,
and at the same time. And it is very interesting if you pay attention to President Obama and his injustice system. And we know that Bill Clinton, that this supposed crime took place under Bill Clinton. And on Lynne's first trial, the person who was the head of the criminal division under Bill Clinton wrote a letter to the judge and said, we knew all about this. This is a terrible injustice, and you are the last person in line to straighten this out. And I feel this is one of the reasons why the judge gave Lynne such a low sentence.
And so her
28 months.
She received 28 months at the beginning. How did 28 months get turned into 10 years?
Well, let me sum it up. I hope that people understand who Lynne Stewart is. You know, we call her the people's attorney for a reason. She was the people's attorney. She took on cases, and in the black community particularly, because as a teacher in Harlem, she saw the injustice of the miseducation that was going on. Let me go further. If you are successful in teaching black children in this system, then they will remove you. Because a dear friend of mine, a great teacher who was successful from kindergarten through high school and has since retired and is teaching in college now part-time, she had a school in the Bronx. Turned everything around in 2 weeks, and in 6 months raised the level of everything. It became a zoo when she got there, and she turned it into a school. Now, in order to turn it into a school, she had to fight the UFT and the Department of Education. Betty Davis is her name. She ended her career when she was asked to help develop Alexander Hamilton High School over on Dean Street and in Brooklyn. And in 4 years, they had 95% graduation, 87% college, and guess what the Department of Education did? They removed her. They put her in charge of another school, Sarah Hale, that was down on Dean Street. And in 2 weeks, she turned that school around. But the agreement that she made with the Department of Education is that she would take on the school, but every penny that was allocated for that school had to go to the school. And she outlined the things, and she said... It's
funny you put your finger right on it.
August 31st, the day that they handed her the papers, she wanted, you know, like a transparency. And they guaranteed her transparency, but...
We're talking about schools now, but it's interesting.
We're talking about schools because Betty Davis was with Lynne Stewart in the early years in an organization we called Teachers Freedom Party. And this is where she bit her teeth into what the education department was. And Lynne Stewart, when Lynne left, she, as a librarian, gave Betty Davis all of her books as a librarian. So there's a connection here. But let me finish up with that.
What people don't know is that our children, when they go to school, they have rights as far as what they are entitled to. And we are told as teachers, you will get fired if you tell them what their rights are because we can't afford to fund it.
Let me finish the story.
Where does the money go?
And when she realized that Sarah Hale High School had 2 budgets, and when she realized there were people a woman who was paid $90,000 a year, and she had never been in the school, and they had 2 budgets under one school. When she said the A word, she was going to the Attorney General.
Right.
They had 500 policemen there, and I was to come with a PTA meeting with 250 people, and I took with the PA president, and I told them, I says, when you turn this corner, you're going to see more people here, more police here, than if they had said Ralph was coming to rob the bank. And I says, and the reason why is there's more money in the schools than in the bank.
Right.
And we turned the corner. They refused to let me in the school to speak. I'm the guest speaker. 250 people were inside chanting, let him speak, let him speak. Rudy Crew was on the phone saying he wanted to have a meeting with me. And I says, I want to have a meeting with you right now on this stage in front of the parents so we can straighten.
They wouldn't do it.
So then I was arrested.
I didn't think he did.
I was arrested on a desk appearance ticket, and I spent 3 days in jail on a desk appearance ticket. And when we went back to court,
there's nothing they're more sensitive about than the school system.
Because the New York City education budget is the 21st largest budget in the whole world. You start with United States, Japan, China, and when you get down to number 22, 21, New York City Board of Education. And that money is controlled and not spent for the education of the children, and it's part of a system that goes from the plantations to the projects to the prison, and if you educate children, then you interrupt that chain. So as I said, this is a whole program that we could discuss.
Well, this is a good space to say. Ralph Poynter, you're working with, how exactly, what's happening now? It's been how many months now that Lynne has been?
Lynne has been in 29 months.
And it's amazing that much time has gone by. And how is she doing? Where is she?
Well, Lynne's mind is beautiful. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to spend the weekend visiting at Carswell Federal Prison in Fort Worth, Texas.
That's where she is?
That's where she is now. And
Fort Worth, Texas?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Does she have any family in Texas?
She has the family of righteous people wherever they are. But and that is another story. We could do 4 or 5 programs on that.
I'm sure we could.
Lynne was, I spoke to her, and she was outraged on the issue of Trayvon Martin.
Yep. And that's where I just saw you just a little bit earlier today.
Right.
We were at a protest for Trayvon at Union Square.
Yes, and she had a statement. I didn't think it was proper to read the statement at a rally, so I spoke about what what Lynne had said, and it's she sees these kids, and one of the things that will tear your heart out when we're talking about children, and Trayvon just past the age of being a child, and they have no place to go. And they have no protection by the adults, the black community. And they're beginning to talk a little bit. I heard Magic Johnson say the NBA players were concerned because their children look just like Trayvon. But as Lynne said very clearly, she feels badly for Trayvon's mother, for no mothers should have this situation foisted upon them, and but she disagrees with her. And when Trayvon's mother said it's not a question of black and white, it's a question of justice, Lynne's answer is it has been a question of black and white in this country since 1619, when the first slave was brought here. And this is merely a part of a chain of actions and reactions that have been a part of American history. And nothing has changed. You can change the name from KKK to Army of Occupation to Police Department. It's all the same.
To Neighborhood Watch?
Neighborhood Watch, call it what you want. It's children and adults who have given up the right of self-defense. And when you give up the right of self-defense, you allow people to dehumanize you, because we described being human as having a desire or a right of self-defense and self-determination. And we have lulled ourselves into thinking that this government that has never given us justice will give us justice. And our position is, as long as the people of the community, black and brown, the so-called minority, that is the majority, do not embrace self-defense, then they've given up their humanity.
Let's talk more about exactly what's happening with Lynne. What's next with her case?
Well, Lynne,
is she trying to get out still? Or?
The 28th, as Lynne says, she has little or no faith in the injustice system. But my feeling is we never abandon the field. You know, like, no, there's not much in those vineyards, but we have to continue working there. And her position when we did the appeal, and that was an appeal of the change of the 28-month sentence to 10 years, Lynne said, I have no faith in the judicial system. I have faith that the people have remembered me and will show up. And she says, beyond that.
So when is the next court hearing?
Well, we had the court hearing the 28th. The people did...
28th of March?
February. We had it, and people did show up. It was a nice turnout. It was reported far and wide, and we're waiting. Now, all it was you go back before the Second Circuit, and let me backtrack for a little bit. How did Lynne happen to change from 28 months to 10 years? And what happened was the Second Circuit had decided that Judge Codal had given Lynne too little time, 28 months. And they said that she was traveling around the country to law schools and universities corrupting our youth. Well, she was traveling around this country to law schools and universities, debating the First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment, you know, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, people's rights.
And I've heard of people getting, you know, being on parole or probation where they have to pee in a cup every week. How do you litmus test your speech when you're on probation or parole? I don't get. I never got that.
Because the only thing that changed between the 28-month sentence and the 10-year sentence was Lynne's speech. Now, that's a First Amendment right. And as Harold Price Farringer said to the court, well, if you feel that Lynne disparaged the court after her sentence, suppose she had gone outside the court and praised the court and praised the justices and praised the prosecutor, would they have reduced her sentence? Which means absolutely not. So how can you, change a sentence based on speech? Well, they did change the sentence based on speech, but they changed it. First, it was because Lynne had quoted one of her clients, as she had said outside the courtroom, as many of my clients have told me, I can do this standing on my head. Paraphrasing what her clients had told her. But even if she didn't, even if she said...
Anybody who's ever been gotten a jail sentence has said that. What else can you say?
What else can you say? And then at the hearing, the three judges, Judge Sachs, Judge Calabrese, and Judge Walker said, that had nothing to do with what we were talking about. What we were talking about, and this is the judges, it was that Lynne perjured herself when she signed the SAMs and then didn't obey them. But the interesting thing was, so many other lawyers signed the SAMs and didn't obey them, and it was selective prosecution. Not only in the Blind Shakes case, but in the Guantanamo case and many other cases that are supposedly dealt with terrorism. Lawyers made statements, and we hear nothing. Why Lynne Stewart? And as many of the people in our community, and I say the black community, they say, Lynne, they didn't go after you because of that blind guy with a turban.
No.
You know, they went after you because of your 30 years defending us. And what she meant was blacks and Latinos and the poor.
And we could go, we don't have that much time, but we could go into how the chief witness against the Sheikh was basically an intelligent...
Imad Salem, who was paid by
over $1 million, and he totally, you can listen to the tape. I've played that tape 1,000,000 times on this show and other shows. It's on the internet. Just type in Emad Salem, S-A-L-E-M, and listen to the tape. Watch the video I made out of the tape, and hear this fella talking to his FBI handlers, and he's anybody could see he's giving them the case in order to get money.
And this is what happened.
He's selling them information.
He did the job for Hosni Mubarak's secret police.
What happened to him?
Yes, Hosni Mubarak is on trial for his life, and they accused Lynne. They said one of the reasons why the jury should find that Lynne was a terrorist and sympathizing with Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman's aims was because she believed in violence in the pursuit of freedom. And Lynne said on the witness stand, she is not a Martin Luther King follower. She's a follower of Nelson Mandela, who spent 29 years in jail because he refused to renounce violence in the pursuit of freedom.
Right. Occupy Wall Street, Mubarak, Lynne, I mean, what happened in Egypt, the Arab Spring, is a direct cause of Occupy Wall Street.
And Lynne is a prophet, because when she sat on the witness stand and said, when people have the heel of the boot of repression on their neck, they will throw it off by whatever means necessary. And here Hosni Mubarak, not 5 years after she said it, has been thrown off. He's on trial for his life. And this very government, the American government, who's now trying to court the Muslim Brotherhood, which the Sheikh was once a part of, is leaving Lynne in jail. And this Obama is outrageous with his Injustice Department when he says he's not going to prosecute Bush for his falsely getting America involved in the Iraq War, for his setting up the system of war with no proof of weapons of mass
waterboarding, torture,
all of this,
people in Guantanamo,
destroying the economy. That's okay for Obama. But Lynne Stewart, who had said this is going to happen, she is a prophet, she is a whistleblower. They put Lynne Stewart in jail. Right. So this is what we're looking at.
As a veteran, someone who's been fighting these struggles a long time, what do you have to say to Occupy Wall Street, what they're trying to do, and what advice do you give them, based on what you've seen and observed?
I've worked with Occupy Wall Street, and I think we had the first Occupy Brooklyn with the members of Occupy Wall Street. And as I say to them, this is a beginning movement. Work on your issues with the people you have. Their issues are education funds, jobs for when people graduate, etc. Our issue, whether we know it or not, is foreclosures, jobs. I think the average worth of a black family of 4 before the economic downturn, was $35,000 or $36,000, and now the average worth of a family of 4 is $5,000.
It's a fraction of what it is.
$5,000.
Yeah. For white middle class families,
Latinos, average family before the worth of a family of 4 before the economic downturn was $65,000, and now it's down to $30,000, and the average worth of a white family is off the charts. But there are many poor white people in America, and when Americans begin to understand that this war on terror is a war on them, just like the war on drugs was a war on black and brown people, then we will have action. And everyone has to work on their issue, and we have to work on all of our own issues together at the same time against the same oppressor, and we will have movement.
So that's interesting. So that's a political analysis. Labor issues, labor people. Black issues, black people. Latino issues, Latino people. But we can all meet together.
We all have to understand who the perpetrator of this is, and it is the 1%. For years, we tried to tell people a different economic system, communism, and let me remark, everybody wants socialism for themselves. but they don't want it for everybody else.
Well, that's a big jump. That's a big leap right there.
Yeah, the corporations want socialism for themselves, but none for everybody else. Everyone wants Social Security. Everyone wants a guaranteed annual wage. These are the things we struggle for, but the moment you put a term on it, people turn away from it.
Yeah.
But I think when you put the term 99% and 1%, that stuck. People could understand and identify with it.
It's spread across America.
Yes.
Really around the world. And it spread to America and then across the United States. And it was enlightening to people because, you know, a lot of people it's written off the United States as ever being radical, ever being able to people getting out in the streets and confronting their own government. And so it's a great breath of fresh air to people around the world to see that they have allies here.
Wow.
In the belly of the beast, as it said.
When we're a week from the street, when somebody says, I missed 2 weeks payroll, I'm in trouble, you know you're the 99%. And most of us are in that position.
Yeah.
I can't think of not working.
Right.
You know, 2 weeks from the street, a week from the street, we're the 99%.
Right.
And when somebody says the 99%, it's getting clearer and clearer. And as I say to people, you ain't seen nothing yet, because this economic system is going to get worse and worse. And what is their answer? Their answer is to cut off the people at the bottom. And I consider us as all living in the ladder of oppression. What rung are you on? I'm on rung 2. Rung 1 has sunk into the mud. They lost their homes. Rung 2, I'm trying to avoid.
Sure.
And many other people are in the same position, and they don't have to admit it to me.
Ralph Poynter, thank you for joining us on the show. I want to give you like a few seconds to basically sum up your message to the audience and what happens next in the case.
Well, Lynn says, as long as we remember those who fought to support us, we are okay. And we have forgotten the brave brothers in the black community who were the Black Liberation Army, who fought to defend the community. And she reminds people, and I remind people, that there were not so many police killings in those days because there was retribution out there. And now we have turned our back on the brothers, and now it comes home to haunt us. And Trayvon Martin is merely a symptom. And I don't want to denigrate his death by saying merely, but when you look at his name, and I could begin with thousands, stolen lives, and all of the names that we could sit here all night long and talk about. So he is a symptom of a bigger problem. The problem is racism, the problem is sexism, the problem is capitalism. So that's our job, to have Lynne back. And she says it, as one of the prosecutors say, I disagree with everything she says, but nobody says it better. So we need Lynne, and I agree with everything she says. Nobody says it better.